We're on.
We're on, Jim.
Hello,
a sip of water.
Drew. How are you, my friend?
Mate, what a beautiful day in Melbourne today. The park was absolutely chock-a-block and great day to be out and about with the kids.
Cracking day, Andrew. Cracking day in Melbourne. I was at the office this morning to facilitate a couple of key handovers that we had from settlements, and it was just a beautiful morning. A lot of people out and about. Great to see a massive number of Zoom private inspections taking place today throughout our team, facilitating some private inspections via Zoom and FaceTime, which was really good. But of course, we didn't conduct any auctions today, Andrew.
Not today, Jim. I think for the next couple of weeks we won't be conducting the auctions. Hopefully this time next week we'll be out and about actually physically doing inspections, and then we can ramp up with the auctions as well. But it's still been a busy week. We posted something on social media the other day with the amount of Zoom appraisals that we conducted. It's actually been fantastic, about 4 or 5 new properties come on the market, and it's worked. So, moving with technology, but it's been great to see everyone getting used to it as well.
Yeah, look, it's been really good. And I've got to tell you, just looking at some of the numbers coming through today, Andrew, some offices are reporting things like, 61 virtual inspections, couple of big results, massive result in Preston today, 2,020,000 at 18 Olver Street. Reservoir was one of the hotspots across Melbourne today. Our team, Harry Contossis and Ross out there, 7 auctions, all sold online, which was brilliant. Some negotiated privately beforehand. The boys, Morty Alec, 1.6 million, 1,080,000. A good apartment in Footscray sold for 700, and some big results out on the peninsula, Andrew, today.
Craig Leo.
Yeah, Craig Leo property, 56 Whitehead Grove in Rosebud, reserve of 820, sold for 1.1. Gabriel Nick, great job. And Matt Ketteringham out in Berwick, sold Grantham Street in Berwick for 1,051,000. So some big results continuing, which with the important message being that we've always been speaking about, Andrew, that we can still facilitate things. So, and we're going to be doing it all week, and who knows, we may be doing it for another week after that as well, right?
Yeah, well, spot on, Jim. And again, we're used to it now, and we've had previous experience, so we just need to keep doing what we're doing and doing our best for our clients. As simple as that.
Now, you wanted to touch on something different today. Given that we didn't have any auctions online, Andrew, you wanted to touch on a little bit about how it all began. And I think that's a great idea, because a lot of our clients watch us every week, but they don't really know a lot about our background or who we are other than what they see as real estate agents, right?
Yeah.
But reality is we're real people. So,
So,
I
think it was a good idea, because every time you go to an appointment or go to an appraisal, more importantly, and people obviously want to know your background and a bit about yourself as well. And the typical real estate agent, pumps his chest up and, beats his chest more or less. But the client actually just wants to know who you are and how you can help more or less, right? And I think most of our clients, they deal with us every single day, but they don't really know how it all started and the reasons why we actually do what we do, right? Because you really have to have a big passion and a big love for actually people. And I always say that you just can't, get into real estate without actually loving what you do and actually enjoy helping people, right? So I think it was a great idea to catch up, especially with your experience as well.
So what do you want to know, brother? Ask the questions. Tell me.
Well, Jim, how did it all begin? And we're flying with this, Jim. We haven't even touched on this, so we like to keep it raw and real. So,
well, Andrew, I'll touch a little bit. I was thinking about this just before, and next week it's exactly 35 years since I started in real estate as a young bloke. Andrew, it was 22nd of August, 1986 that I started at our Nidri office, and I walked Killer Road, Nidri, 397 Killer Road, Nidri was the office there. And I remember walking in, it was a Friday morning, Andrew, and I walked in and you don't know anyone, got introduced to the guys and shout out to Vince DeMayo, who's still out there punching. He's, Vince is a young
good on
bloke
you, Vince.
in his 70s, and he's out there still doing what he does. Bump into him around water gardens all the time, an absolute gentleman. And back in those days, Andrew, mobile phones didn't exist. They first came out. We got our first phones in 1987. And here's a little, a side note. My number, 310855, was the 355th number on the air, because Telstra kept the first 500 numbers. 310 was the first series. Anyway, and I was paying more then for a phone than what I did for a car back in those days, Andrew, and getting $212 a week as a salary. But I started in Keilor Road, Midri, Andrew, in sales, and with EJ Doherty, which of course then transformed in 1999 into Barry Plant Doherty when we merged the two companies, and we ran our business like that for a number of years, and then of course we transitioned again and refreshed into what we are today, which is the Barry Plant Group. So started then, mate, and I've got to tell you, they were different times. We didn't have fax machines, we didn't have emails, we didn't have the internet. All we had was a landline and a local paper. And we didn't even use photography. We used sketches back then, line drawings of houses in the local paper, Andrew. And I remember the local paper used to come out on a Monday and hit the letterboxes on a Tuesday. So we would sit in the office on a Tuesday until 10 o'clock at night, waiting for the phone to ring, and there'd be half a dozen salespeople, and mate, as soon as you saw the light up, the phone didn't ring. As soon as you saw the light, you just bang, grabbed it. Good evening, EJ Doherty, to make sure that you got the inquiry right. Different times, yeah.
Yeah, no, mate. I always say, especially now to the people that actually start now in today's environment with real estate, because you've touched on it a little bit, how it was many years ago, and I've had the pleasure of speaking to yourself, Bill Carp, and the rest of the crew, and the hours that you gents had to put in with inspections, and even even discuss how you used to present offers. Like, we know how it is today with obviously digital contracts, but you didn't have any of that, right? So you didn't have emails. So tell us a bit about that. How was that process?
Well, Andrew, let's keep it really simple, right? If we look at, one of the documents that we use when we sign up an offer is a Section 32, a vendor statement, right? Yeah. And nowadays we can list a property, and within 24 hours we can have a vendor statement available. In those days we would list a property, and there were no conveyancers. It was all solicitors. So clients would use a solicitor. They would take 2, 3, up to 4 weeks to prepare a Section 32. We couldn't get it faxed because they didn't exist. It was either they mailed it to us, or we used to jump in the car, drive to the city, because most of them were city lawyers, and go and pick up a vendor statement. Then we had to drive to the client's house to get them to sign it. Then we'd get the client in, and we'd either go and see the client or get them into the office, and we would use, back then, carbon paper, which most people nowadays don't even know what it is, because we had to do a contract in 4 copies. So we'd have carbon paper in between. You used to push really hard so it would come out on the other copies, and you'd get ink all over your hands. But mate, our cars then were genuinely mobile offices. In the boot of the car, I used to carry a box that had contracts. We used to have to use what was called a Section 51 back then. It was a statement that we had to give to a buyer to say that we're not promising them any finance. Because back in the day, Andrew, we were agents for building societies, so we were able to give people personal loans of $5,000. And finance was that tough that people would take what we called cocktail loans. They'd get a $5,000 personal loan or a $2,000 personal loan through statewide, then they'd go across the road and get another one, and all of a sudden they had a 10% deposit, because we were selling houses for $35,000, $40,000 back in the day, right? I still remember in Taylor's Lakes, Andrew, along Chichester Drive and some of those streets. Harry Contossis is trying to call. He must have just finished. I still remember doing, we were selling the Metricon double-story homes, house and land, for $99,000. So you could buy, that was probably late 80s, early 90s, where people could buy a brand new double-story home, about 30 squares, including land, for $99,000, right?
Whereabouts was this?
Chichester Drive, Taylor's Lakes, right?
One of the best pockets in Taylor's Lakes.
Australia Drive, right? And then, back in the early 90s, we went through the late 80s, Andrew. We went through massive crash, and I think I've said it to you before that I remember that for probably close to 15, 16 months, doing 2 or 3 auctions every Saturday and not getting one bid, right? We would just rock up, we'd stand there, neighbours would come, and we'd just pass the property in. And finance got really tough. People couldn't borrow money. Interest rates were, 17, 18%. Business, I remember when I first bought into the business, Andrew, in 1992, my overdraft rates were 21%. I was paying 21% interest on my business loan. The story, John Nakic, my business partner, who was my first boss when I started working there. John was the youngest ever licensed estate agent in Victoria, and the youngest person to be a partner in the EJ Doherty Group. And when I started, he was my boss, and Helen, his wife, was our receptionist, and which is how they met.
Yeah, that's John and Helen.
Shout out. And then a few years later, Bill Karp came over. Bill was working at the Preston office. He came and joined us at Nidri, and it was Bill, myself, Vince DeMayo back then, and we were the A team, right? We were the guys that, we do what you did, Andrew. We'd be in at 7:30 in the morning, and we'd be there till 10, 11 o'clock every night. And a massive shout out to, especially to my wife and to our wives for putting up with all of those early years of us just not being home, Andrew, And
it's funny, because I actually use that now, and I say this to even my team, Justin and Dario, and I always bring it up, even if I'm, we all have days that we're a bit down and we're a bit tired, and I always say to myself, you know what, as Jim always reminds me, I don't have to go to my clients at 10 o'clock and actually physically go and see them and whatnot. Kids being asleep and the wife and all that kind of stuff. It was completely different back then, right? And I always said to myself, we've got it easy,
Yes.
And I really believe that. I really do. Because I think these days you can get home at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock and still be speaking to clients on the mobile phone or through digital contracts and whatnot. And for you guys to do what you did is a massive shout out, massive compliment.
Well, that's just the way it was, right? And that was, if you wanted to be successful, that's what you wanted. That's what you had to do. And reality is, Andrew, that real estate hasn't changed. I mean, this business has always been about the people. And I think a lot of salespeople or a lot of people enter this industry with the wrong impression of what it is, and they think it's going to be easy. The fact is that whilst nowadays we've got technology, and the teams today don't work anywhere near the hours that we used to have to put in back in the day. But that's a good thing, right? Because the sacrifices we had to make in not seeing your kids grow up and all. I mean, I didn't do that, I've got to tell you. The minute we had a child, which was, fast forward, it was a lot later than that. It was in 2001, but and things had already changed. We already had technology, albeit not what it is today. But, I made the decision, and I was at a stage in my life where I said that my family, was priority. So, whenever there was kids' sport and school drop-offs and all the rest of it, I made sure I was a part of that, because I didn't want to be one of the dads like the guys that I'd worked with that were never around with their kids. And that's exactly what I say to you, right?
I was going to say, took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say exactly what you taught me as well. Spot on.
And because, we do what we do, but we do it for our families. And at the end of the day, this is our chosen career. And I mean, I've got to tell you, I still love real estate today as much as I did when I first started it. But that was my, that's when I started, Andrew. Tell people a little bit about you, mate.
Yeah, I think I basically fell into the industry, Jim. I remember still to this day driving down, I can't remember where I was driving, but I was in the car and tuned into the radio, and I never listened to the radio, right? So always just have my CD player playing, and the tunes pumping back in the day. And somehow I had the radio playing, and Barry Plant came on, and they said, "Oh, they got this seminar night, down in Bell Street." I can't remember the hotel there down Bell Street, and saying, "Yep, yeah." Sorry?
The careers night.
Careers night, yeah. And so I thought, you know what? My friend goes, why don't you go and do it? I was, in between, school, and I was back then, I was doing a Sparky apprenticeship, and I didn't really like it. So I thought, I'll kind of, try and change careers. I was only there for about, a year or so, and I thought, might as well give it a crack. So I went to careers night, and went there, and Tony Larkin, I still remember this to this day, goes, "Oh, where you from?" And I said, "Well, I'm from St Albans." He goes, "What are you doing here?" "Well, this is for the, Barry Plant Coburg office and what." And I said, "Well, I had no idea, mate. I just thought I'd come and listen in." I was only about 19 years old back then. Yeah. He goes, "Oh, listen, go and speak to, John Aaron out in St Albans." And I got his contact details then. And, long story short, 16 interviews later, he gave me your number, and came and had an interview with yourself and Sam Lespina back then, because he's obviously a rental director, and started in leasing. So basically got into leasing, and that was really good, an opportunity to get into as well, because I always say property management's, to be honest, at the moment, and will always be one of the hardest, probably part of real estate, dealing with, tenants and landlords and whatnot. So that was great exposure to me in real estate. And basically from there, was there for about a year or so, I think it was, Jim. And last back then had one of his assistants leave, and I quickly put my hand up and said, "Listen, I'd love to get into sales." And not that I knew a lot about it, but I thought, why not take the opportunity? And then basically ran with Lass for about a year or so, and then went on my own. And then, the rest is history. But I got into it purely and simply out of luck, but I did love people. So that was always me, my background, in sporting, and always, obviously been around people a little bit older than me, because when I was playing sport, I was, 15, 16, but I was always playing with, more so adults and so forth. So I had a bit more maturity as well, which helped. So getting into real estate, that definitely helped me as well, become a bit more mature as well. So, and then as soon as I got into it, I just loved it. I loved, dealing with people, and just the thrill of knowing that you're helping someone move forward with the biggest asset was amazing, right? So, and then obviously under the guidance with yourself as well and the rest of the crew, just kept doing it.
I was just going to ask you what it is today. I mean, it's your career. You're doing what you're doing, and I do what I do. What is it that you love the most about the industry, Andrew?
Honestly, Jim, it's more so my clients. I think, even in today's environment with lockdown, I generally, I worry for them. I care a lot. At the moment we can't do much, and that frustrates me because I know it's out of my control. And I think from the day that I started the industry, I always said to myself, and my dad always taught me, I think, work ethic is something that you can't really teach. You can obviously try and guide people and tell them this is what you need to do and whatnot. But, I was fortunate to have, my parents, my dad in particular, obviously, working late hours. And to me, that was just normal. My dad was always working, back then, 18-hour days, right? And I'll never forget it. He'll come home and start working on his trucks. And I'm like, when's he going to come back and have dinner? That was just him. He had no real choice. He was working 2 jobs and bringing us up. And I remember even doing a real estate course. I remember I thought I didn't even tell my parents I was doing real estate. Going back a little bit, I was doing a labouring job just to save up for my first car. So I did that just because I knew I was getting into real estate and needed a car. So I worked extremely hard for 6 months before I got into the industry to work into obviously leasing. Saved up for my first car so I can have something, right? So that was one thing that I suppose to today that I'm thankful for. I was never given anything apart from always having food on the table, as simple as that. And my parents did everything they can for me, right? So, going back to sport, every time I got injured, physio bills and so forth, I still now, even for example, now I appreciate all the money they spent just for me to go and see a physiotherapist. Because back then, you know, the average wage would have been, say, $600 a week, and my physiotherapy bill would have been, you know, a couple of $100 a week. So I was like, you know, I didn't understand it back then, but now I do. And that was something that obviously today I appreciate, because obviously now it's like, you know what, I've got obviously my family and so forth, and that's exactly what we're doing, you know, why we work so hard for. But yeah, lucky enough for me, work ethic was something that I was just it is what it is for me. I didn't have to struggle about working late hours and whatnot, because it had to be done. There was no other reason, right? So, you know, coming into the office early, even when I was Lass's assistant back in the day, even though I wasn't on a great wage, you know, you taught me from day one. You always said to me, and I'll never forget it, you always said, you know, don't think you're going to make money in the first couple of years or first 5 years even. You know, become a sponge. And even David Lucy, our sales manager back then, said exactly the same thing. You know, it's all about learning and just listening. And I did that. I just listened to your advice. And it was true. I didn't make a lot of money, but I didn't care, because yes, I was lucky in a bit that I was at home still, so I didn't have to, you know, worry about making a lot of money. So that was, you know, fortunate that I started a bit early. I just listened to Lass's advice back then, who was obviously my boss, and just, you know, respected clients' needs, you know, listened to clients. You know, back then I was working a lot more with buyers. So buyers would say, oh, this is what I want in a house. I want a 4-bedroom property. I want to be in Tullows Lakes, or wherever the case might be. You know, back then we didn't have, you know, Excel spreadsheets and databases. It was just all handwritten notes, right? And little buy cards. And every time a buyer used to call me, I just write a little note next to their name. And as soon as a property came on the market, and, you know, Lass will go out and list the property wherever it was, you know, he'll come back and say, yep, I'll listen to this property. I'll come back, you know, hit the phones and call all my buyers and whatnot, and just gave them exceptional service. Now, I didn't think that was exceptional service. I just thought that was normal. It was just a normal thing for me to do. But clients were like, oh, he actually called me, because I'm like, what do you mean I'm calling you? Of course I'm calling you. You told me to call you, right? And like, yeah, but no one calls us. I'm like, geez, really? And that's when I knew, you know what, Jim, that's when I knew. I thought, this is great. If this is how easy it is to help clients just to find the property, then this is great, you know. And then and I still do exactly the same thing today, you know. Like, yes, today we've got our mobile phones and, yeah, we've got databases and so forth, but we just keep it simple as that.
You know, Andrew, it's a joy listening to that. And the reality is that, you know, I touched on what it was like back in the 80s. And we look at it, we fast forward 30 odd years.
Yeah.
And it's no different. The fundamentals are no different. Our business is all about people, and it's about caring for clients. And it's like I've always said in all of our sessions to all of our crew, because it's what I was taught, never think of the dollar sign. Think of the client.
No. Yep, correct.
Do the right thing by the client. The money's a byproduct. That'll come. And that's how we've always run our business. And I think it pays dividends, because, you know, we look at it, we're in a very, very competitive space, right? We're in a space where a client that doesn't sell a house that often will bring in 2, 3, 4 agents. You know, some of them bring in 5 and 6 and 7 just to confuse themselves a little bit more. And you know, we have to look at it and we say, well, what is it that we can offer that's different from our competitors? You know, what is it that we as individuals, as Barry Plant Real Estate, what is it that we can offer? You know, the reality is, when all the fluff is out of it, Andrew, it's the fact that, and where I think that we've had the biggest difference, I say we collectively as a business, if we go back, I remember when John and I were actively listing, selling and doing all the rest of it. Well, we changed back in 99, 2000, when we merged and became the Barry Plant Doherty Group. We made the decision that we were no longer, and nor would we ever, compete with our staff and with our sales team. And we took the step back, that we decided that our role was to nurture, coach, mentor, guide, train our people to become the best people they could be in the real estate industry.
And that would have been hard.
It was hard. It was a big decision to do that. But we took that decision. And in those days, Andrew, you know, we were going through a growth phase where we were opening multiple offices, you know, every year, every 18 months, we were opening another office, you know, Gladstone Park, Deer Park, Sunshine, Melton, Werribee. You know, we went through a big growth phase back then. And on top of running our own businesses, we were managing that and building our people. But for us, it's always been about the people, and it's always been about abundance, and it's always been about everyone sharing, and everyone benefits from that, rather than I'm the boss, you're not. It doesn't work that way.
No,
right?
Well, I know in our office it doesn't. And you think about the clients that you dealt with. We spoke about one of the clients yesterday that you're selling their land in Taylor's Lakes. I won't mention any names just for privacy. But you think about how long you've known that client for, and you know they established Taylor's Lakes, and they established many areas in the area, right? And to have a relationship with a client like that, you just you can't even buy that. That is just something because they trust who you are as a person, and because you're in real estate, they just trust you with their properties, right? And then as a bypass, our office, our team benefit from it.
Andrew, I've got to share something with you. This is a funny little story. It just came back to me. I mentioned before that we were selling those Metricon house and land packages for $99,000. So back then, Metricon's head office, and Metricon isn't the company that wasn't the company back then that it is today. It was still a big company, and they were growing. And the developers of Taylor's Lakes, of the land, and we know that the first developer was Alan Bond through his entity Walton Stores, and the selling agents were Abbott and Dean. Now, Abbott and Dean Real Estate was on the corner where the car wash is now as you come off the freeway. And that was their office. And George Popescu back then was the land salesperson, and he sold every single block. So as outside, let's call us outside agents back then, we were in Killer Road. We were the outsiders, right? And back then, the sales guys wouldn't want to drive to Taylor's Lakes. It was too far to drive from Nidri. And I was the young buck, so Taylor's Lakes was my baby in Keilor Downs. You go, every time an inquiry would come in, you go and do it, right? So my car, direct. We had two-way radios in the car because we didn't have phones, and off we'd go. And I remember they started building these house and land packages, and then the market crashed, and Metricon was stuck with I don't know how many of them, and they couldn't sell them. And so I said, I've got to get onto this. I need to get these listings. So I kept ringing, trying to speak to the boss of Metricon. And back then it was two blokes that owned Metricon, Mario Bison and George, my goodness, his surname escapes me now, were the two owners. So I drove to their office because I kept ringing and they wouldn't take my call. I drove to their office in South Road, Mordialloc, Mentone, whatever it was. It was an hour plus drive back then. I parked the car, I went in, said to the receptionist, I'd like to please see Mario Bison. And she said, have you got an appointment? I said, no, this is who I am. I'd like to see him. I have a buyer that wants to buy the houses in Taylor's Lakes. I sat there, Andrew, for 4 hours and 25 minutes. I wasn't leaving. I said, I'm not leaving until he sees me. Finally, he invited me in to his office. I introduced myself. He said to me, you've been sitting there for 4.5 hours. I said, that's right. He said, why? I said, because I want to sell your houses out there. And he said, I'll tell you what I do. I think they had, from memory, they had about 15 of them. He said, I'm going to give you one. You've got 1 week to sell it. I said, okay, no problem. So I got a key, rushed back to the office, and I sold it in 3 days, right? I rang. And then after that, I got a sole agency or exclusive back then on all the rest of them. And over time, we sold them all. More importantly, fast forward 30 years, Mario and I are great mates, as you know. And we formed a lifetime of friendship over it. But just incredible the way that things pan out when you take a chance. And they were the sort of things that we had to do because it was about people, right?
Yeah. Spot on. Even with, for example, a gentleman that we know that did the Meletta estate. I remember I was in rentals back then, and he had a few agents that were working on the Meletta estate. So Meletta estate, as you know, there was, I think, 20 of them or thereabouts. And Alfred back then, he didn't really deal with a lot of agents, and he gave us the opportunity in leasing and a couple other agents. And he goes, all right, go and lease them. And I remember I leased the first, I don't know, in about a week, I leased about 10. And the other agents didn't lease anything. And he goes, well, here you go. I remember Jenny Zammit back then, the property manager, then got the opportunity to manage them all. And now to this day, I sell Alfred's properties, right? And I didn't know who Alfred was. I just, it is what it is, right? And now we've got a great relationship with him, and he does a lot of development. So, back then it was just, okay, this is what it is, and work hard, and you just don't know who you're dealing with. That's the best thing as well in our industry. You just really don't know who they are.
Never judge.
Yeah.
Never, ever judge. You don't know who is. We've all seen that little clip, that meme on the guy that's dressed like a bum that goes into a car yard and the salesman doesn't pay him any attention. And ends up going to another dealership and buying a Rolls Royce or whatever it is. It's exactly the same with property, Andrew, isn't it? I think of some of the biggest sales value-wise that we've ever made to the most humble people. And then we also know that we deal with the others that are all swank and nothing in the bank, just like most real estate agents, by the way. But that's just the way of the world, right? Doesn't matter what industry we're in. But the fact is, we are a people industry. And, if we didn't love dealing with people, we wouldn't do what we do.
Yeah, spot on, Jim. But in saying that, fast forward how many years you've been in the industry, what's the biggest change that you've seen?
Oh, the biggest change, did you say?
Yeah.
I think the biggest change has been obviously the advent of technology and the luxury that brings. And the luxury that brings, not just for us as operators, but I think people as buyers, as sellers now are a lot more informed. And, they have a lot more information available. Everybody can just punch something into Google, and they can punch an address into Google. They can punch your name or my name into Google, and they know whether we're decent people or whether we're assholes. That's the reality. The reality now is that the advent of technology has made everybody much more informed. As far as consumers, all of us as consumers. The other side of the equation, Andrew, in our business specifically, is that the technology that's now available allows us to provide a much more streamlined, more efficient service. It allows us to provide a lot more information to people so that they can make an informed decision. And it allows us to facilitate. I mean, who would have thought, a couple of years ago that we would be doing online auctions, virtual tours, virtual appraisals. I mean, my goodness, you never would have thought that, right?
No.
I know nothing beats the face-to-face, but the technology, I think, is the biggest change, Andrew. And the other thing I think, although it's never changed, is getting the right people in our business. It's having the right people that have the same values, the same beliefs as we do, the same desires as we do, and that's that's probably been the challenge. Is finding those people and nurturing them and mentoring them and coaching them to become what they should be and what they can be, and of course the change has been the technology, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, spot on, Jim, 100%. Well, look, I think even from where I started, back 10, 11 years ago now, my God, even in my short career, a lot has changed, and I know I've actually been lucky enough to be able to see a couple of different, changes in the middle of the market. I remember when I first started in real estate, just towards the end of the peak. So back in 2009, when the market was flying, I remember that, we'll list the property and in hours it'll be sold, right? Very similar circumstance to how the market is at the moment, right? But different still, obviously. And then overnight, it just crashed.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the biggest learning of my career, because that was probably the best thing that's ever happened. You've been through it before, so you understand, as you mentioned before, with going to auctions and passing auctions in, week out. And that's probably the best thing that's happened to you as well, because now, and I'll get to it in a second, so the market changed in 2010, and then for a good 4 years, the market was quiet. We were doing open floor inspections, and back then we didn't do a lot of auctions. We did a lot of private inspections. We had 100 plus properties for sale on our books, and we'll do an open floor inspection every Saturday and have 0 people come through. And as soon as one buyer came through open floor inspections, you were like, oh, wow, look at this. And they're like, oh, I wasn't a buyer. Oh, I was just a neighbor going past. You want to buy the house? When you actually met a buyer, you treated them like gold. And that's something till this day that a lot of agents that are new actually don't realize how blessed they are to have 10 people come through an open, 15, 50 buyers through an open floor inspection sometimes. And they don't realize how important it is actually to communicate with these buyers. So a lot of buyers these days just don't get communicated to, right? And they feel like they're left in the dark. Whereas back then, as soon as you got a buyer, you had no choice but to treat that buyer like gold. And as I was just about to say, passing in properties at auctions, that's actually how you become the best negotiator. So when we pass a property in, we don't get flustered. We just like, okay, great. This is what we get paid to do now, right? Is to negotiate. We know it's easier to have 50 groups go through a property. We still provide exceptional service to our clients, buyers, and vendors, of course. But realistically, you're a fantastic auctioneer, and we're all good auctioneers in our office. But it's easy. Like, calling an auction is simple. When you got 4 or 5 buyers, we all look like superstars, right? And that's just easy to do. But when you pass in a property and you're, say, 15, 20 grand short, that's what we love, and as much as our clients don't love it, I actually love it. I love negotiating, right? So when you have to actually go back and forth, that's actually when you do what you actually get paid to do, right? Is to negotiate. And, we wouldn't know how to do these things if you didn't have the experience back then when the market was quiet, because when the market was quiet, that's what you did the whole time, right? So you sat down with a buyer, sat down with a vendor, and negotiated.
Andrew, my nickname for rock stars with no socks, and they're the 2-minute noodles, right? They're the people that get into the industry. Things are flying, the market's good, they're selling stuff, and I think they're rock stars. It's not about that. That's all short-lived. It's exactly what you said. And the journey is about learning, and the journey is about what do you do when things change? Because it will change inevitably, right? As it's the way of the world. The market goes in peaks and troughs and cycles. Right now, as a real estate agent, you're busy. Things will change eventually. And it's the skills that you pick up along the way that will allow you to then deliver fantastic outcomes to clients because of the negotiations.
Yeah, spot on, Jim. And you're spot at the moment. We're in a busy marketplace. There's plenty of buyers out there, but if you don't work hard in these markets and you take the foot off the pedal, when the market does change, you're going to struggle. It's as simple as that. And we've seen that with plenty of our agents that worked in our company as well. They only knew great markets, and as soon as the market softened a little bit and you had to chase, they couldn't do it because they couldn't do the hours. It's as simple as that. But at the moment, things are looking bright. So it's a bit easier, isn't it?
It is, mate. Well, that's been a really good insight, Andrew. Into
has been. Enjoyed it. Bit different.
Where you started. Yeah, where you started, where you're at, and the journey's only just beginning. There's a whole lifetime ahead of excitement and growth. So well done. But Andrew, numbers have just come through across Melbourne.
I've had as well.
They have just come through. Barry Plant Group, 39 out of 43 auctions scheduled today and sold for 91% success rate. So
great job,
once again, strong day. Good results,
Yeah, no, spot on. Great job. Well done for managing those campaigns, especially at the moment. So terrific job. And hopefully next week we're back on the tools.
Exactly, mate. Tell me what. So where are you going tonight, mate? You're going from the kitchen to the lounge room to the family room to the backyard. What's scheduled in the Kulozos household?
Mate, exactly what you just said, mate. Unfortunately, not much we can do, but definitely go out and support the local, restaurants and out here as well. So, as we touched on the other day, I was speaking to a couple of them. They should, not close their doors, but they've just stopped working for now, right? And it's a bit sad to see, but try and support the local restaurants out here and get some taking. And that's basically it, Jim. I think that's probably the most important thing to do at the moment, really, is just to support all of our friends and family and hospitality, because they're the ones that are struggling at the moment.
100%, mate. We did Italian last night. We had D'Estasio home delivery last night, and tonight we're doing Greek, Andrew. We're supporting a local shop called Golonaki over here in our area that is absolutely fantastic. They make the best Greek food, so we're supporting them tonight.
Good job. Yeah, nah. Well, I think I'm not too sure what's on the menu. I'm going to ask Lisa and the kids, see what Christian and Isla feels like. But no doubt it'll be a discussion for about an hour and a half before we get to where we want to be. Normally the case.
Is your place the same as ours? Like normally, Georgie says to me, I say to Georgie, what do you feel like eating? She goes, I don't care, whatever you want. I go, I will get some Thai. No, I don't want Thai. Let's get Italian. No, I don't want Italian. Let's get fish and chips. No, I don't want fish and chips. Let's get Greek. No, I don't want Greek. Well, what the hell do you want? Right? You don't care. But anyway, we'll figure it out.
That's the fun and games that we live in a family household. But that's about it, Jim. Been on for about 40 odd minutes, and thanks for the comments there, Mary and Robert. Appreciate all your comments there, and again, it's been a great little chat. Thought we'd do something a little bit different, and hopefully even real estate agents and our friends and family and clients can get a bit out of this as well and get to know us a little bit better.
And what we might try, Andrew, during the week, I'm going to ring around and see if we can get a special guest during the week, like we did last year during lockdown when we interviewed people from different industries. I'm going to see if we can get us another little special guest for during the week.
Yeah, that would be amazing, and we'll definitely give them a plug as well when they come on.
Fantastic. Well, mate, you have a great night, and I can't say I'll see you soon, but I will see you if we've got a settlement happening early in the week. So I'll certainly see you virtually anyway.
Yeah, definitely will, Jim. Have a good night. And guys, stay safe and we'll speak soon.
Well done, Andrew. Love to the family. See ya.
You too, Jimmy. Bye-bye.